welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about how each cognitive function correlates with a random sensory object or image. To start things off, we'll start off with extroverted judging functions. So firstly we have TE, or extroverted thinking. TE is very matter-of-fact, externally involved in decision making and streamlining a process that's logical outwardly. And what I thought of was IKEA instructions. Totally what people would think of when you want to solve something externally. You have a set of instructions from IKEA. Let's just say you're building a shelf. And people always online talk about how difficult it can be or how methodical it has to be. And that's exactly what TE is about. Decision making and going in a straight process from A to B while being logically consistent and efficient throughout. But that also could lead to TE when really unhealthy in tandem with FI, leading to bragging about reputation or how one wants to be perceived when it comes to being in charge, which a lot of people can do also when doing instructions and are like, they want to be in charge with finishing it and doing it their way, the way of the instructions, whereas some people might want to do it a different way, which is usually a TI user. The next judging extroverted function is FE. FE, I thought of something a little interesting, a retainer, like a retainer for your teeth, more specifically, Invisalign. Invisalign, it prioritizes all teeth being aligned, just like TE with all logical things being aligned, but more in how everybody's feeling and the ethics, thoughts, considerations, and opinions of the group. It does that to your teeth. It likes to keep whatever was done with braces or whatever thing lined up so that your teeth can stay lined. Every tooth is also included in that. There's no tooth being left out, usually with retainer on side of the mouth, like top or bottom. The problem is, though, it can neglect itself and not be kept in check of itself because it's doing so much to help something else, which is the teeth in your mouth. But over time, if you constantly grind your teeth, then the retainer is going to become worn down. And also with time, like one cannot simply always be considering the external feeling world, but also internal, because we all have that. And also without TI, which is the other function on the FE-TI axis, it can't be cleaned properly and will live in this external delusion of always wanting to fix the teeth. But you also need to, put a tablet in water in the retainer and have it cleaned, or clean it yourself manually. Like, those things are very important too. And you need also TI and FI to balance FE in order for it to not be unhealthy. Next, the judging introverted function. So we'll start with TI, which is introverted thinking. I thought of a rain drain. Like when it rains, it pours, and on the street you'll see a rain drain which leads down to the sewers. Rain falling is the info that the TI user is constantly processing. I mean, we all use TI, but in different capacities, and is being distilled into this sewer system which runs all throughout the town. Think of that as your mind. While collecting it, it's taking whatever, but compartmentalizing different parts of it in order to build its own internal framework of logic. I also thought that the cold water could represent how pure, unadulterated TI can be a lot of times stereotyped as cold when unhealthy and not in tandem with FE. It's also hidden. The sewer system is hidden. No one is looking at a sewer system when they see a drain. They only see where it enters. And it's hidden, so it's prone to not having enough sensory or enough external opinions when being by itself, because it's constantly just in your head, because it's an internal judging function, right? Similarly, FI deals with internal feelings, values, morals, and going about life in a way that is authentic to themselves and is unique to each person, which everybody has, but it's just when making a decision, how stuck are you and how much do you value your own personal convictions when making the decision. So I thought of a fairy door entry, and I feel like FI is a very underrated function. Many people love to talk about how it can be selfish or it's not useful when making decision making, but it very much is, as each cognitive function is. I thought of a fairy door because those ones you'll see randomly on the street, because it is unique. Like each one of us taking in different value systems, but it has its own, and it sets its value from its own, in turn with also being connected to TE on its axis. And you'll see fairy doors, each one you see around the street is going to be different. It's not going to be the same. They're all unique to whoever created it, painted it, whatever. It's a little creative project, and that's how I'd like to see FI, because it wants to hold those values up when making decisions, especially if it's higher on your cognitive stack. There's a tree that it's connected to, usually, not all the time, but tree. And I thought of a big tree and its roots, and all FI is its authenticity with the door. When it's paired with extroverted sensing and extroverted intuition, creates that internal framework of decision making coming to values. Also, its reluctance to mold to whatever group it's around, which usually happens. You'll see FI users conforming. However, they prefer to make decisions based on their own guidelines. And a tree doesn't just move unless you like really chop it down. Like, it doesn't move, it's stagnant, it stays there. And when animals come, they can make their little homes, and people find value within FI people just like FE. But it's in a different way, where the FI user is more stable and always its roots are growing, but it's stable. Let's move on to the perceiving functions. Let's do NE and SE, which are both extroverted perceiving functions. NE is a bit fuzzier, and I thought of a Febreze. This isn't Febreze, but it's a nice room spray. And what NE, I imagine, like, is diffusion. NE starts from a topic and diverges into many different ones. It makes things wet when you spray this onto something. The particles from it will go anywhere, and they'll stick onto anything, which is just like how NE deals with topics and patterns. They like going outwards and sprouting that. Also like roots, but more outwards. Throwing anything to the wall and it's sticking. Also, it attaches to chain of events in tandem with SI. And the smell too with this can bounce off and like stick onto things. And then if someone, let's just say I spray this onto my clothing, someone could smell it near me. Also think of perfume, cologne, anything with diffusion I think of as NE. And it can transfer idea to patterns. Like, if this sticks to me, it'll stick onto something else, like the couch, and then something. And those are totally unrelated things, but this is the glue that can see how they're connected and then just branch off without that internal analysis, just seeing that, just perceiving. Because perceiving functions alone don't do any judging. Those are what the judging functions are for. They just take things in as they are when they're external. SE, I thought of as a bitter shot of espresso, like one you'll find at a coffee shop or something like that. Let's just say it's not a good cup, and you'll drink it, right? And you're like, oh, and you literally get a punch in the face, right, of that taste. If it's probably not made well or it's burnt, that's what I'm thinking of. It wakes you up with a punch in the face, and extroverted sensing is just unadulterated sensory, just people say five senses, but literally anything without any personal judging or we'll talk about SI later, but just by itself. It also goes beyond just getting the punch in the face, because when you take that shot of espresso, or how many shots you do, you get a boost of caffeine. What caffeine's effect usually is waking you up to be a lot more reactive, be a lot more present in the moment, which is exactly what SE does. It can operate in just a present way when you take caffeine. That's why people drink it before they wake up, drink it after they wake up, in order to wake up for the day and go to work, so that they can be fully present and going on to the next task. And SE is able to do that naturally. So if you're a high SE user, you're gonna naturally just have that effect of being present, which totally, you could be like a totally sleep deprived ESFP or ESTP and not be like that. However, how you perceive the world is going to be like that. Next, our last functions, the introverted perceiving functions, which are the most hard to define just because it's internal and perceiving. So I'll start off with SI. I thought of SI as slime. So but hear me out. SI has order in details and is detail focused about routine making and consistency with the sensory, but in an impressionistic sensory input. It's the opposite of NE, which when looking at something in any user, a high any user will probably go to abstract patterns that they notice coming off of it, which could also be sensory things, but in an abstract reasoning type of way, whereas a high SI user will also do that because it's paired, but will compare what they've noticed in the past or their own personal experiences, or what a lot of times what people describe are bodily sensations, which I've yet to really look into, is how they use their reasoning. Slime, it's always reliable in that when you leave it for a long time, it goes back to its original form, which I view SI as because they're often routine focused or loyal and really thrive in those types of environments. It'll eventually just become flat again. The ingredients are all inside and you have reminiscence of each one. Like if you put a certain lotion that smelled in slime, you can smell it still, which is like an SI user, if they have an experience, that'll stay with them more and they value more in using in their not present decisions, but when paired with TE or FE is what they value more when making decisions. When you play with slime, all your hand oils are going to become a part of the slime, which is like how each experience that an SI user has forms their own sense of how they go about the world, and it's just natural coming in. So I'm trying my best to distill it as something that's perceiving and it's just unconscious because that's what it is, but defining it with sensory terms can be a bit difficult. So for NI, I thought of scissors. Let me actually get my pair of scissors right now. They can only cut sensory, right? And NI is hard to define because it's, once again, an unconscious process of distilling insightful and universal pattern, but not growing outwards like any, but inwards. What I thought is that, okay, an NI user can only cut a line or a single line with scissors. You cannot cut both ways at the same time with one pair of scissors. It's only in a line, or it can be a curved line. And that's just how NI deals with stuff naturally, in creating realization from patterns and realizing they can create a line of focus. And that's why NI is associated with willpower a lot and the future, because let's just say they have this goal, they're naturally going to be able to make possibilities in their mind that streamline every possible idea and streamline it into one, which is the opposite of any, which is going to want to spread outwards. Scissors can only cut sensory, right? So that's why NI is paired with SE. By incorporating sensory, scissors can cut through something like, let me get a piece of paper. NI could have these multiple possibilities and take them, put them together, and just boop, are able to see it through like that, which any type can do. However, NI, it's unconscious and it's like how they like to live their life. And it's completely, yes, this is a sensory example, but it's completely separate from SE when it comes to how it's getting its information, but it needs SE if it wants to implement these plans, which is why if you're a high NI user, it can be hard to implement your plans, yet they're very stuck in your way you're processing it. And the more you develop SE as a high NI user, that's when you can actually make the scissor cutting happen and not just cutting straight lines in the air. That's how I imagined it. Leave a comment if you have any ideas about what random sensory objects you can imagine these MBTI cognitive functions. Also, if you have any concerns or different opinions about how I describe things, please let me know, because I know there are probably a lot of loopholes for how I describe things, but I just wanted to think of random things that MBTI cognitive functions could be that weren't just like simple, like, oh, SI is like an old man remembering stuff or stuff like that. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.